Carla. Welcome to all of you this morning. First of all, I really feel honored to be able to stand in front of you, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk to you this morning. In regards to the topic of this conference, shared identities, the following three thoughts came to my mind immediately. First, being passionate about music. Two, being devoted to sharing music with other people. And finally, the word responsibility. As I stated in my keynote speech delivered at the previous International Kodály Symposium in Edinburgh, Scotland, many of us artist educators feel responsible, quote, to serve as missionaries for the preservation of the aesthetic and humanistic values expressed in musical art and for the transmission of these values capable of enhancing social and cultural transformation to the next generations, end quote. The reason that we feel so is because we strongly believe that music enriches our human life with tremendous amount of spiritual and intellectual experiences. I believe that this is how Kodály also felt. He expressed it in his speeches and he wrote it down. In his writings, topics such as the education of the whole person, spiritual nourishment, spiritual enrichment, order, discipline, and the shaping of the personality through valuable music are frequently recurring ideas. The Kodályi Institute, this significant representative place of Hungarian musical culture and that of the Kodályian heritage, stands for these values. We should all keep it in mind that this heritage means more than musical training. It is a huge and rich reservoir of wisdom about the sense of art, music, language, the European and Hungarian identity, Eastern musical traditions in the light of Western culture, thoughts about national cultural heritage, urban and village life, as well as a rich body of scholarly works on topics related to the history of music, folk music, issues on music pedagogy that are relevant even today. Without understanding the depths of Kodály's philosophy, it is hardly possible to reconstruct why Kodály needed, for example, the folk song or relative psalmization. Today I wish to talk about some features of Kodály's personal character as revealed to us through his music, through his writings, and highlight some important inspirations that led him to formulate his pedagogical concept. I wish to do so in the hope that we can reach a better understanding of who he was and what he tried to achieve in his life so passionately. We have access to Kodály's collected writings in the 3-volume publication entitled In Retrospect, as well as to Kodály's letters that have assisted me in preparation for this keynote address. We are also in the possession of several valuable recollections of Kodály's personality by people nearest to him, including his students' reminiscences about their master's enormous impact on their professional life. Let me share with you one example. According to Bence Szabolcsi, Kodály was the most severe educator, the most demanding, and the most inspiring at the same time. Anytime I departed from him, says Szabolcsi, a great musicologist and a student of Kodály, I felt as if I'm carrying with me the fresh air of the snow-capped mountains. He, Kodály, was full of German, Italian, French and English culture, including Goethe, Dante, Verlaine, and Shakespeare. He was in the possession of tremendous knowledge about ancient Latin and Greek culture, as well as about the Bible. And how much music, the whole history, The entire past and present of musical culture was fluctuating within him. It was inconceivable when and how he managed to collect and to store such a great knowledge, end quote. I would like to highlight 4 further aspects of his human character and creative achievements based on the following headlines. The duality of tradition and modernity in Kodály's personality. The duality of his national and European identity. Kodály's reflections on the values of peasant cultural traditions and their influence on the development of his educational philosophy. Finally, Kodály's idea of the singing Hungary. Let me start with the first topic, tradition and modernity. First of all, we have to assert that in Kodály's thinking, tradition and modernity are not contradictory, exclusive subjects, nor are they polar opposites. The multicolored aspirations of the early decades of the 20th century did not leave Kodály untouched. He was receptive of newness and novelty. He was a regular member of the young intellectual circles. He made friends with some of the most outstanding and progressive figures of the Hungarian and international elite. At the same time, he became entirely passionate about the music of the peasants. The inspiration gained from traditional music and the folk song, together with his great interest not only in the great classics, but in the progressive compositional trends of the early 20th century, the unity of these two can possibly be most easily traced in his compositions. Kodály aimed at creating a new national musical style, fertilized by the sound and the soul of Hungarian peasant music. His musical endeavors as a composer did not receive unanimous praise in the beginning. Composers of the avant-garde regarded Kodály's compositions too strongly rooted in traditions, while the nationalists broached his preference for peasant music over urban songs popular among the middle classes during that time. In order to illustrate what this new national musical style means, I chose 2 short excerpts from Kodály's Christmas motet, Angels and Shepherds. Please listen to the first excerpt and decide how many different languages you hear. The 2 languages that you heard, I'm sure you noticed Latin, and the weird one was Hungarian. But not only the Hungarian text that makes this Hungarian, is the melodic feature that you could hear in the beginning. La, 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 la. This characteristic pentatonic motif, so familiar from the Hungarian folk song material. And at the same time, you hear imitative counterpoint, which connects this music to the Western tradition. And essentially this is what he refers to as the new Hungarian music, fertilized by the sound and the spirit of Hungarian song embedded into the West tradition of Western musical culture. Kodály was hoping that through his new pedagogical program, promoting the systematic use of traditional folk music, it will be possible to reawaken the Hungarian musical consciousness, and as a consequence, the new national musical style represented by himself and Bartók will have more receptive audiences. We have to understand that for Kodály, the study of folk music in schools is not only the basis for musical intelligence, but more importantly, the basis for the acquisition of culture and the appreciation of traditional values. Folk song was never the mother tongue of Hungarian children in the cities. Therefore, Kodály wanted to teach these youngsters their musical mother tongue. This way of thinking about music education for young people was a truly novel and unique idea in the first half of the 20th century. Modernism existed in other forms in Kodály's life. Life reform characteristics of Kodály's modern lifestyle included his special attraction to nature, to village life and sports. Village life and sports makes more sense. Here is an excerpt from one of his letters written on his trip to Csallóköz in 1905. I walked all day so that I did not see any villages, only the forest and the green pastures. I never believed that the Csallóköz would be that beautiful. Silver water, silverish willows and poplars, silverish meadows, covered by tufted maidenhair, tilted by strong and deep green. Even the sky and the sun shone in silvery bright. I believe that it is more beautiful than Paris. I am drinking and jeering just like the village lads. I have already more than 100 songs. My speech is like of those living here, which is sadly spoiled by the urban idioms of the language. Kodály was worried about the urban lifestyle becoming somewhat desolate because of the fast tempo of daily existence that drives not only a city's social, economic, and infrastructural formations, but also its psychic forms. His longing for the beauty of the Hungarian landscape and his devotion to the Hungarian folk songs that show strong resemblance to the song repertoire of Eastern traditional music never diminished Kodály's devotion to European culture. This is expressed in the next quotation. One of our hands are held by the Nogai Tartar, the Votyák, and the Cseremish people. The other hand is held by Bach and Palestrina. Are we going to be able to connect these two distant worlds? Can we one day stop tumbling on a ferry boat between the cultures of Europe and Asia and become a bridge, or even better, a dry land that is connected to both? This would be a task great enough for another 1,000 years. His love for Hungarian music did not spring from a nationalistic sentiment, and by no means it was fed by some sort of fanatical patriotism. It simply reflects his devotion to beauty and his respect for traditional values. To prove this, let me quote what he said in regards to the implementation of Hungarian folk songs into music education. When I refer to the role of folk song in education, I do not mean the irredentist songs sung while waving flags and masquerading in non-historical Hungarian dresses. Not only the outside, in the flag-waving, yak-yaking should our world become Hungarian, but in the depths of the souls. We have to build the foundations of our Hungarianness deep under the earth's surface. The deeper the keystones are built, the stronger the building is. The first keynote of the subconscious Hungarian existence is the language. The second one is the music. The best foundations for the subconscious national character are laid by folk tradition, primarily through his children's games and children's songs. Let me focus more on Kodály's thoughts about pedagogy, but from the viewpoint of educational philosophies of his time. Sándor Karácsony, the Hungarian educational philosopher in the first decades of the 20th century, was a representative of a new way of thinking about school education and had a great impact on pedagogical thinking in Hungary between the two world wars. He promoted the creation of a learning environment in schools in which students could learn in similar ways to how young people are brought up, taught, and shaped in a traditional community, in the traditional cultural environment of the village. This pedagogical thinking is based on the realization that any knowledge accumulated in any discipline is the historical product of social cultural processes, including different generations and evolving over a relatively long period of time. In the center of Karácsony's pedagogical philosophy is the question: what is education? What is educational training? Can educational training be realized at all? If yes, at what circumstances can it be realized? According to him, the essence of education is the situation between teachers and students, which is void of any rigid school hierarchy. Instead, it resembles a family-like relationship that is based on strong and positive bonding of parent and child. Hierarchy in his educational concept was replaced by so-called guided participation. In this model, knowledge is accumulated and constructed during the process of active participation in social-cultural activities where explorations and reflections about the world are made, and as a consequence, the learning happens in the unity of intellectual, emotional, and social development of the person. During the process, one's value system is formed, cultural, social, and intellectual values are realized and fulfilled. This is how Sándor Karácsony's philosophy is reflected in Kodály's writing about music education in rural communities. As the children were growing up in the community of a village, they acquired gradually all songs suitable to their age. In church, they joined the community, learned the hymns by ear, and by adulthood, they had collected a nice repertoire of songs. Every child practiced dancing. Their games were connected with roundelays, body movements. Especially in dance-loving areas like Transylvania, you would often observe adult people teaching the secrets of men's dances to 5-year-old boys. Town children were deprived of this spontaneous musical life. The kindergarten, not obligatory, could hardly replace the natural village life saturated with music. Schools and kindergarten have to supply this lost natural evolution. School life saturated in music, daily exposure to arts and music, learning in an environment where interactive social relationships and active participation are granted, learning in a family-like community established between teachers and students based on love and respect. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that this is the learning environment that Kodály found the most ideal for the realization of his great dream about the singing Hungary. We must remember, though, that while his pedagogical concept was formulated in the social and cultural environment of the 1930s, it was implemented into practice in the Hungarian schools only during the communist era. Obviously, this could not happen without several severe distortions to the concept. Kodály was not able to interfere much. He could not wage war on the Communist Party. That would have been a fatal error. But he could support and encourage many young talented teachers who led the Kodály movement to great success that attracted the attention even of the outside world. Kodály knew that the realization of his dream about the singing Hungary is an undertaking that could not be carried out alone. The practical realization of his dream was assigned to his best students. Much work was assigned to highly accomplished and very fine musicians, equipped with a creative spirit and a sovereign mindset. They were all greatly inspired by Kodály, quote, the greatest animator and mediator of Hungarian music, as stated by Mihály Icés. And they all carried out their work responsibly and with much dedication. Reading through Kodály's writings, we can draw a clear picture of how he thought that the program of the Singing Hungary can be realized. Everything has to be started in the kindergarten. Caring for the kindergartens and their music is not a pedagogical question of secondary importance, but it is about the ways how we build our country. In order to achieve this, we need talented nursery school teachers with proper musical training. And the rebirth, sorry, this is reformatted in this new program, I'm reading it. And the rebirth must be started at the bottom. The finest curricula and the wisest regulations issued from above are of no value if there is nobody to put them into practice with conviction and enthusiasm. Souls cannot be reshaped by administration, but souls reshaped by beauty and knowledge are easy to administer. The musical experiences in the nursery school give firm foundation to the success of singing in the school. But what is required for the success in school music education? According to Kodály, 3 things are needed: well-trained teachers, quality musical material, and time. The failure of school music education has been the direct consequence of the absence of 3 things: well-trained educators, teaching material, and time. One of the most important elements in the concept of the Singing Hungary is singing every day. Daily music lessons, daily exposure to the beauty of music. Every single note sung in the school prepares a dwelling place for the muses in the soul of children. In his thinking about music education, Kodály emphasized the idea of, quote, music of intrinsic value, and the encounters with classical masterworks in the place of the, quote, watered-down art substitute. Original works are to be written, compositions starting from the child's soul, from the child's voice in text, tune and color alike. There is need for more and better compositions for children's choirs. What they sing in the school, says Kodály, does not even approach art. The way they are singing is far below the level of talented naturalism. And finally, about the teachers. The qualities of the teachers seems to be of primary importance for Kodály, since he mentions the need for qualified teachers before making references to time and to the material. Kodály claimed that the best teachers have to receive the right remuneration in their jobs. Otherwise, teaching is not going to be an attractive professional pursuit for most professional musicians. Trained young musicians have one look at how much salary of a singing master is, and they go straight off and play the piano in the cinema, because by starving, they cannot build a nation. Although, says Kodály, success only needs some singing teachers who, at the chime of the midday bell, do not throw the mortar back into the mortar trough, for whom, even if it is not their official duty, a little additional work is a spiritual need which can provide a stimulus and is the soul and significance of the teacher's task. One more argument for the need of the qualified teacher. Serious tasks can only be accomplished by seriously prepared professionals. The essence of choral music education cannot be measured by competitions. According to Kodály, we do not need competitions. Too bad that there are so many of them. Maybe, Kodály says, we should strive for having singing festivals instead of competitions. At festivals, there are no adjudications, no marking. For after all, every musical production cannot be measured by the inch at a horse race, where there is no problem. The horse nose is this much or that much longer, so it came in first. At a choral production, the results would have to be measured and summed up by so many short heads that it would take a year to work out the results. It is important that young people are not forced to sing, but singing is presented to them as a joyful pursuit. A music lesson in the school should be about practical music making, bringing forth refreshing musical experiences as much as possible, as opposed to focusing on tedious theoretical arguments. And finally, how does the concept of singing Hungary look from the artistic point of view? I had the chance to take delight in the electrifying singing of simple schoolboys and their indisputably beautiful performances of a high artistic level, says Kodály, that was conducted by modest school teachers who are not even considered artists. Ladies and gentlemen, in my speech today I tried on purpose not to mention teaching methods generally associated with Kodály's name, simply because Kodály actually did not write any method for teaching. One of his students, the great Hungarian piano professor Pál Kadosa, once mentioned how Kodály lacked a methodical approach to teaching. Quote, "Someone once asked Kodály what was his preferred method of teaching. Kodály answered, 'My method is that I do not have a method.'" This was typical of Kodály, said Kadosa. Music and the student was always his point of departure. Dear ladies and gentlemen, instead of getting lost in the steps of the teaching sequence, I would like to encourage you to do the same. I would also encourage all of us to regularly reflect on our pedagogical reasoning and actions and see whether they are in harmony with Kodály's ideas, but not with the ideas that we gather from secondary sources, but with the ideas that we receive from him, from his writings, from his music, and from his pedagogical compositions. Kodály's music, his creative achievements, his personality, and his pedagogical legacy form a cohesive unit. In Kodály's life, like in the life of a philosopher, the thoughts, the feelings, the words, and the actions were in harmony. When we make a reference to Kodály, we must never overemphasize or omit one or more aspects of his philosophical thinking, because the concept can be easily distorted and can lead to misinterpretations. Justifying musical and pedagogical actions that only partially correspond to Kodály is wrong. I have a feeling that today concepts such as the Kodály method and the Kodály teacher are used far too often, and sadly enough, too many times irresponsibly, because the content behind the name is not in harmony with it. There has been so many remarkable achievements in music education over the past 50 years that Kodály would be very proud of. In order to preserve this wonderful heritage of Hungarian culture that has inspired so many musicians all across the globe, we have to keep working hard. We need many more dedicated people like you. We need well-trained artists who can transmit musical culture to the next generations at a high level. In the schools, we need great and creative teachers who feel obliged to use their talent and creativity for the musical growth of young people. And of course, we need a good and well-supported education system. The Kodály Music Education Institute of Australia is one of those fine institutions in the world that was established for the promotion of Kodály's heritage. I would like to encourage each of you to continue making this organization grow, continue laying the bricks on the road to happier and better future through music education. It is up to you how many more bricks you lay and whether these bricks are laid level and the mortar is strong enough so that while the institution keeps growing, it will always remain strong. For that, you need to remember one thing: never lose a connection with Kodály and the profoundness of his heritage. Thank you for your attention.